I'm Robert Holmes from Spring Hill, Tennessee.
My name is Kimberly Beam Holmes, and I live in Spring Hill, Tennessee.
So I was born at small at the time, not well-known military base called Fort Gordon in Georgia. It's right on the border with South Carolina.
I was born in Augusta, Georgia, and that is where I grew up until I was about 12 years old.
It was a pretty simple and quiet life. We went to a small church. There was a new pastor very shortly after we got there, and his name was Joe Beam.
The first encounter I remember having with Rob was the first time he came to my house. I was maybe 3 or 4 years old. He was probably about 5 or 6. And we were up in my room playing.
We fought constantly over the toys. She was very territorial with the toys.
That's how we met. We first met as kids fighting over toys. I was very stingy with my generosity, and you could say that some of those things came into our marriage as well. We are two very stubborn individuals.
Kimberly and I actually did not remain friends after that. You might be shocked to find out that kids fighting over toys don't want to be each other's friend after that. We did not keep up with each other over the years. We would often have our lives parallel one another.
When I was a sophomore in college, he had already left school, and he was in flight school in Alabama at that time. But he asked me to be friends with him on Facebook. So we started chatting on Facebook back when there was actually just chat, not even Messenger. And we just kind of started to connect. The thing was, I was dating another guy at the time. And as soon as February came around, we kind of reconnected in like December or January. But then in February...
I don't remember what prompted it, but for whatever reason, I decided to tell her Happy Valentine's Day on Valentine's Day.
On Facebook, like he wrote it on my wall. And when he told me that, I went screaming up and down my dorm room hall saying, he told me Happy Valentine's Day, because at this point I liked him. And that was pretty much the last thing I needed to break up with the guy that I was dating that I really should have broken up with a long time before.
And then she and I got talking, and things heated up quickly. When I would come up to Nashville from South Alabama on leave or on pass, I would make it a point to visit her.
I had never felt as much of a princess as he led me to feel.
And she sent me a message over Facebook basically saying, hey, I think we should date. And while I was hesitant to jump into a relationship because I had left one, and I was also very busy training to become a pilot in the Army, I decided to give it a shot. And I was like, well, let's try this. And next thing I know, we were married.
So Rob proposed to me the day before my 21st birthday. My dad likes to say that I gave up my freedom before I even had it. And so it was when I was there visiting him in Alabama right before Thanksgiving that one morning we had been waiting for weeks on where he was going to get his first duty assignment with the Army.
The worst case scenario of all the places I could possibly be stationed was South Korea. And the reason is because traditionally you had a lesser shot of taking family there with you. You can take family, but it was usually understood to be more difficult. When Kimberly asked me, what are the chances that you'll get that? I said less than 10%, don't worry about it. It's probably not gonna happen, so don't sweat it. And of course, that's what we got. And I remember the day that I got my duty station. I knew what it was. Kimberly was on the base at the same time as me. She called me to ask what it was. I said, I don't want to tell you over the phone. And she was so emotionally distressed while she was waiting to hear what the duty station would be. And she could sense in my voice that it was a place we didn't want.
I ended up wrecking his truck. It was a huge thing, and to this day, he won't let me live it down.
She actually crashed my truck.
But by the time he finally came to me, because at this point, like, the military police are there, and we have to do all this stuff, and I'm saying, where is it? And he said, it's Korea.
And as a result of that, and knowing that we would be stationed in South Korea, we had a decision to make. Since we had just gotten engaged, we weren't planning to get married until perhaps June, and yet I would be stationed wherever I was stationed by February, and in this case, South Korea.
At no point in our planning did we ever think Korea was going to be where he was going to be stationed. And all of a sudden, everything we had thought was going to be for our future, the summer wedding, me being able to finish school at Lipscomb, all of these things, it was just completely upended. And so even my summer wedding, like even my ideal summer wedding that I wanted to have, we said, okay, let's figure out how to do this. And I remember it was all a whirlwind. I was still taking final exams. Like I was in the middle of all of this, and at the same time, just decided to literally get married and move halfway across the world. And so ultimately what happened was this. All of the things that mattered most were the only things I focused on.
Kimberly and I's wedding day, it was great. I mean, everything worked really well. Everything came together, and tons of friends and family there. It was a pretty happy day. We knew where we were going to go afterward, and we knew that we weren't going to be able to stay in the United States for very long, so we enjoyed ourselves while we could, and it was pretty enjoyable. So our marriage before moving to South Korea was a little bit stress-inducing. I had some things I needed to finish up at flight school and graduate formally, and then there's kind of a period of time after you've graduated before you go where there's some relaxation. That was kind of nice. But it was also kind of rocky. We were a newlywed couple. We had never lived with one another before. She insisted that I put the lid down after going pee. And I'm a dude. And I'm like, what do you mean? So she taped the lid of the toilet down to the toilet. And I'm not one to back down from a fight. So I took that tape, rolled it up into a ball, and threw it right there in the toilet to show her. That proved to be a mistake.
The first year of our marriage was very hard. And this part, I don't think I was prepared for, because so many people say, oh, it's your honeymoon, it's amazing, it's just so blissful. But we had a lot of life circumstances just piling up on us, even getting to be married. And then even after marriage, we moved halfway across the world. I left everyone I knew. I left the college that I was attending, my job, all of these things, to go and be with my husband, which I don't regret. I've never regretted, and I didn't regret that part then. But he was also a pilot for the first time. He had a very high-stress job, and it was hard. And so once we got settled in Korea, which had to happen kind of quick because he had to start going to work immediately, it was him being gone 12 to 14 hours a day. I couldn't have a car in Korea, only he could, and he had to take that car to work. And so I was stuck at home alone every day.
We were both very stubborn, and we were living in a foreign land. And so there was this mixture of the excitement of the adventure and also the difficulty of simply being newlyweds who only dated for 8 or 9 months before getting married.
My husband's an introvert, and I'm clearly an extrovert. And so he had been around people all day. He had been doing hard work, being around people. He was very stressed out, and he would just want time alone. And I felt completely abandoned. I felt like I had given up everything to come and be with him, and that he didn't even want to be with me anymore. And so it was difficult. And so we fought a lot. And a lot of that fighting was just because I wanted to be seen, or I wanted to be heard. Ultimately, I just wanted him to spend time with me. And ultimately, he just needed some time to decompress. But we weren't mature enough or even in tune with each other enough to respect that about each other. And so the first year of our marriage was very hard. Our day-to-day lives living in Korea were tearing us apart.
Further into my Korea deployment, we decided to actually stay longer than 1 year. And after about 1.5 years, we had a decision point that we came to. Kimberly had managed to graduate doing school online while we were there. and it was time for her to start a graduate program. And she chose a marriage and family therapy program at Lipscomb, which was both of our alma mater in a way back here in Nashville. And so the decision that we made was we're going to send her back. And I think we learned during that time that when you're in the military and you don't have to be apart from one another voluntarily, that the military is not forcing you apart through a deployment or anything like that, that you shouldn't be apart. If you have a choice in the matter, stay together. And we learned that kind of the hard way.
Now, we based that decision off of a lot of assumptions that we thought that he was going to be able to get a specific next duty station, and that we thought that he was going to be able to leave Korea on time. Neither of those things ultimately happened.
That year apart was kind of rough. We saw each other for maybe 4 weeks. She came to visit me over Christmas, and I was kind of living like a bachelor, but a bachelor who's married. And when she came to visit me for a month, I didn't really adjust my behavior.
During that time that I was there, I didn't really feel like Rob and I connected very much.
I recall playing video games so much that she and I connected for probably only a number of days while she came to visit me for an entire month over Christmas. And it was only after she left that I had any kind of remorse or regret, that I was like, wow, I wasted what little precious time she and I had together on video games. By summer of 2013, I was able to make it back home after lots of kerfuffle. Congress actually literally had to get involved to bring me back because of some administrative issues, but I was able to make my way back by summer of 2013. And after being apart for so long and then coming back together, more issues kind of came up.
I actually remember the night that he came home, because it was one of those instances where I was planning for him he was supposed to be flying back at the end of July. And instead, one night I was staying at my parents' house at this point, and I was sitting in my old bedroom, from being a teenager at my parents' house, and I looked out the bedroom door and down the hall, and he was just standing there. Like, he had flown home early and he had flown in to surprise me. And he was standing there in his full uniform, and I was speechless. Like, I don't know that I was happy to see him. And my mom kept saying, "Kimberly, aren't you excited?" And I just kept saying, "I'm just surprised. I wasn't expecting him to be here yet." And it was very surreal. And I think I had gotten so used to life without him that I didn't know what life was going to look like this time with him. Our first year, as I said, of marriage was very hard, and I didn't really want to relive that.
The transition back was almost like the beginning of our marriage all over again. It was going from being a bachelor of sorts to being married all over again. And the first month was great. We had a great vacation that I had planned. I was able to surprise her by showing up a few days early. Things went really well at first, but around the 60 to 90 day mark after I got home, when this new honeymoon period started wearing off, the issues started coming back out. Lots of fights. I would often turn to alcohol to help numb whatever I was feeling.
What I was scared of came true. The next year of our marriage was maybe harder than the first, because what was easy was being apart. What was hard was learning how to be together again. And especially when you add in that now we've had a year of separation where we've accumulated new habits and knew things that we liked to do or didn't like to do, and we've been so used to doing things in our own ways, and now you have to reintegrate that again. And at that point, there was still a little bit of a wall up in our marriage.
There was a shift for the better later on. After that difficult transition period, some of the stress from work started fading a bit, and I was able to focus more on us.
I knew when things were getting better because there was a point when, about a year and a half after he came home from Korea, where Rob specifically told me about some things that he had not told me about before. And it was that point forward in our marriage where I feel like a huge shift happened, because the wall that I had known was there, that I had felt like was there and just knew was there, was finally coming down. And so I felt like I was able to be more open with him from that point forward because I knew he was being more open with me.
We then got stationed in Texas, and while that's still a 12-hour drive from where we live here in Nashville and from our family members, it was easier to be able to talk to family members because we're in the same time zone, and also at times visit family members, because even driving from Texas to Tennessee is faster than flying from Tennessee to Korea.
So the first date that Rob and I went on, that night at Cheesecake Factory, I had just a couple of weeks before gotten back from a mission trip to India, where I had been at an orphanage for about 3 weeks.
When she and I first started dating, that's all she would talk about. So I kind of understood that even from the moment we started dating, that if I marry this girl, we're going to adopt children from India.
And so it was when Rob finally got out of the Army that we began to seriously think about starting a family. And at first, I thought, like, well, I guess we need to start having kids so that we can eventually adopt our kids from India. And we kind of went down that road, like tried to get pregnant and things, and it didn't happen. But also, I just wasn't super excited about the thought of getting pregnant. I really just wanted to adopt kids from India. But I just thought this is the way you do it. Like, you have biological children first and then you adopt. And I remember I was speaking with some friends and they said, Kimberly, you do what God has put on your heart.
We got into a small group at church. And in that small group was a family who had just adopted a daughter from India. And I thought to myself, it's time.
He came to my office, showed up one day at work, and he said to me, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. I'm ready to start the process. And he showed me where he had actually been the one to reach out to an adoption agency to begin the process. And I was so thrilled. I was overjoyed. And the process was hard. More difficult for me than it was for Rob because, again, I can be a very anxious person. And so to me, anything that could go wrong was absolutely going to go wrong. And all I wanted was these children. Like, my heart had been yearning for them for years.
It was kind of in the waiting that a lot of anxiety, worry, drama could arise at times. Kimberly was very much wanting the process to move forward, and I was just kind of like, it's God's timing. And looking back at the process and how things went, both on the India side and on the United States side, I see God and she sees God all through it. But at the time, it was very anxiety-inducing for Kimberly as she had to wait. But we got our children.
During the whole process of the adoption, I just kept thinking about that night before. Like, how am I going to be able to sleep the night before we go and meet them and get them and bring them home with us? How does anyone sleep that night? Well, the answer is you don't. Because both of us went to bed at 9 p.m. and woke up at midnight. And we weren't supposed to be at the orphanage until 10 a.m. But how are you supposed to sleep? You're about to bring home 2 children and literally go from a family of 2 to a family of 4. And so we wasted 10 hours doing, I don't even know what now, eating, I'm sure, until we were finally able to go to the orphanage and meet our children and bring them home. Eliana and Arrow, our kids, bring so much joy, honestly. There were things Rob and I probably never would have talked about because it wouldn't have come up without having kids. But when you have kids, you just begin to learn more about each other because he'll share things about things he did when he was young or memories that he had or things that he wants to do with our kids because they were memories for him, and I do the same. And so our lives are just so much more full. Also, very much more busy in just the sense that our crazy kids are loud and eager and boisterous and love to laugh and have a bunch of fun. But it's hard to imagine like living in a house now without the kids.
It has caused us to grow together as teammates, that we're not just a couple alone in the world with, an obese cat and a dachshund as our fur babies. Like, we actually have human babies now that we have to take care of. There are real poopy diapers. The kids actually can wake up at 5 a.m. and dig through all the cupboards and tear everything out in the morning, and the animals couldn't do that. Huge surprise. So it caused us to definitely grow together as a team. And even though there have been some kerfuffles short term, long term, it's helped us tremendously. Grow together. It's helped me learn more patience. Who'd have thought being a father helps you to learn patience? And I've also been able to get in a much better touch with my softer side as a result of having kids and empathizing with them as they screw up and as they do well.
We continue to grow together and to learn about each other and to figure out how to better communicate with each other. It's a never-ending journey. Rob and I, especially over the past couple of months, have just gotten into a stride. We are talking more than we've been talking in the past, and we talk a lot, but he's been able to speak more into some things in my life that I've been struggling with, and he's been giving me a lot of wisdom. And part of it has even been me just being open to hear him. And I think part of what has led to a lot of our conflict in the past is both of us want to be right. And that's a lot of our personality styles as well. We both just want to be right. And so a lot of times I wouldn't listen to him. Even if he had a good idea or a good opinion about something, I would just say, no, that's not what I'm gonna do. You don't understand. And I've realized over the past couple of years, and especially past couple of months, actually, he has a lot of wisdom, and I should actually be open to hearing him and listening to him and not be so defensive about me trying to figure things out all on my own.
I think that having kids has definitely caused us to grow closer, even though there are things we can't readily or easily do with children that we could do when we were just the two of us, like just up and go to another country on vacation spontaneously less than a week later. That was something we could do back in those days, and we did do. We loved exploring, we loved going on adventures. And now with two children, there's a lot of logistics and planning that goes into that. But ultimately, I feel that we're a lot stronger as a result of having kids. Even though we can't have everything we want right when we want it, we're both more driven to try and be, in our own way, good parents and good providers for our family. And that provision comes in the form of whether, it's financial, but also emotional provision. Emotional provision wasn't something I even had on my radar prior to having kids. I just thought I tell my wife I love her, that's it, we're good to go, and I give money. Boom, done, I'm a provider. But when you have children, you realize that that's not nearly enough, that emotional provision, it's not just financial provision, it's not just providing a roof over someone's head, although I feel like we've both been able to do that pretty well. It's emotional provision, to turn toward someone who you love when they're in distress and actually address them, look them in the eyes, reaffirm your love for them, and talk about hard issues. And learning to do that greater as a result of being a parent has helped me be a better husband too. If you're going through a marriage crisis right now, the only words I have to tell you are remain hopeful. Remain hopeful and hang on. No matter what happens, whether the marriage ends or whether you're able to fix things and have hopefully a better marriage than ever, I believe that you should remain hopeful, because no matter what, you can take certain principles, and by the way, Marriage Helper will help teach many of those principles. You can take certain principles and you can better yourself, so at the end of it, whether you stay together and have a happier marriage than ever, or whether things do go south and you do divorce, you can take a better you into whatever that is.
There is always hope. No matter how hard it seems, no matter how many obstacles you feel like there are, no matter how many negative sentiments that you may have towards your spouse right now, there's always hope for a future of a better marriage.
My name is Rob Holmes, and this is Our Marriage Story.
My name is Kimberly Beam Holmes, and this is Our Marriage Story.